Another big stigma is against getting help or seeing a therapist. And I want to try and break that today, because really it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to see a professional when you are in that place. And I want people who see this video to understand that, because when you're offering help to someone else, it's good to let them know it's okay to get help too.
Got to do the face stretches right now. What's up, everyone? Welcome to The Current Christian, where we are connecting and encouraging disciples in leading fruitful lives and ministries. This is the wrap-up of our series talking about mental health, and we are here today with our good friend David, who has been studying and working in the field of mental health for over several years now, and he's been kind of like our go-to guy. He's given us all the information that we need in order to have a better understanding of how to deal with mental health, either in our own small groups or in any type of ministry or setting where we are around other people, where mental health may become a topic of discussion. You know, people are opening up about their emotions. So this episode is going to be more devoted towards recognizing the limits when dealing with mental health.
Absolutely. Limits are very important. It's best to recognize exactly, as far as what you actually have experience with and can speak into, or if something is out of your depth. If you just cannot relate or are not sure how to handle something, it's good to recognize that and not try and force anything or any measures as far as trying to help someone. And
we've talked about some strategies before in previous episodes. For example, can you talk about the one on depression?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk about one of the strategies with depression. When you are working with someone, or you're not working with someone, but in a small group, and someone opens up to you about depression, it's important not to try and lecture them. Sometimes it's best to just be there to listen. You don't have to try and say that you completely understand what they're feeling and what they're going through, but being able to let them express what they're going through in a way that they feel safe doing, that can be enough. Simply being around and being there can be what they need. You don't have to have the answers or have the perfect set of advice that's going to pull them out of that slump.
And then anxiety is also a very popular one, mental health struggle that a lot of people go through. And what were some of the strategies that we had talked about when it came to anxiety?
Absolutely. It's very similar. Just being there to listen if they're dealing with something. If you are close to them, it is okay to maybe try and talk through that with them. If they have an event or something that's going on in their lives that they're just stressed out about, maybe being able to sit there and strategize with them, helping them come up with ideas or steps to make whatever is making them anxious, breaking that down into ways they can actually approach it and address it can be very helpful. Sometimes when you're in that place, and I'm sure you could probably relate on some level, if you're anxious, you have a hard time thinking through things very clearly. Your mind just gets so focused on what's wrong. It's good to have someone there that can talk that out with you and maybe help you to put those things into a better perspective. And that can be your role as a leader, just helping them to put things in perspective, or it can maintain just that listening relationship that person might need.
Yeah, I think when it comes to having a personal, when these things are happening to you personally, at least from my experience, big thing is just remembering that these feelings aren't permanent. So remembering that what we're going through is pretty temporary, but we should be careful not to make permanent decisions. And then just to reiterate what David had already said, when someone's coming to us with these things, with these struggles, remembering that we are there to listen and not to lecture. Because if people want advice, they will literally ask for advice. That's the way you know if they want advice, is when they are asking for it. And it's a hard struggle. I do it a lot. I want to be the person that fixes things, but people aren't projects. They're not things to fix.
Absolutely.
Don't be meddling with that type of thing.
Absolutely. And it's hard, and we discussed that in the other videos too, that part of our nature as a leader or in the Christian community is to want to fix. We want to help and be there with the answers. But sometimes it's as simple as just being there to listen.
Yeah. And that's Psalms is reminding me of that a lot. Mm-hmm. David just we can learn things from Psalms, but a lot of times it's just David venting to God. And you don't really hear too much of God's response in it, but he's listening the whole time. So if we were going to take on God, God's and Jesus's characteristics, a big thing is just listening. So in our previous videos, we had talked about some strategies when helping other people who have some mental health struggles or when dealing with our own mental health struggles. But there are times when someone or even ourselves will be dealing with things that are far more serious that definitely require some professional assistance. So when can you help us to kind of know how to identify when we're reaching that state of like needing to go to a professional versus just us trying to handle it ourselves?
Sure. I mean, it always will come down to how are you processing things in the moment. It also comes down to what that person is bringing up or talking about. A lot of what we've been talking about in this video is about limits. So knowing your limit as far as what can you relate to, what can you tie experiences back to, and how close are you with this person. A big part of that is maybe questioning if someone is coming to you with, thoughts of like recurring depression, if they are, continually falling into that place of like lacking motivation, always feeling sad and lonely. If it seems like it's a continuous thing, it's possible there might be something deeper going on. And the same with yourself. If you find that you are continually falling back into that place, especially when it doesn't seem like there's a reason to be going into that place where you're feeling sad and alone or anxious and going into panic attacks, like there could be more going on. And it's okay to ask that question. One of the stigmas we brought up early on was, about how people might perceive you if you're in that state of mental health. Another big stigma is against getting help or seeing a therapist. And I want to try and break that today because really, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to see a professional when you are in that place. And I want people who see this video to understand that, because when you're offering help to someone else, it's good to let them know it's okay to get help too. It's a difficult topic to broach because oftentimes, especially if you're in that place, it might be easy to perceive someone saying, hey, maybe you should see a therapist as an insult because of the way we stigmatize it now.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you can come to someone honestly and say, listen, you're going through some pretty heavy stuff right now, and it seems like it's been going on for a while. Have you considered talking to a professional or a counselor who can maybe better process this with you? You can always say that you're always there for them, that you're always there to listen and to offer support when you can. But at the end of the day, you're probably not a professional. You might not have the schooling or education to offer advice or techniques on how a person processes a stressful event or how a person processes their depression. And it could be something that very likely does need medication, which you can't provide. So don't expect yourself to be the one to fix that. Don't expect yourself to be the one who has the answers in those cases. Try to become comfortable with offering those options if you are close enough with that person and they are expressing more serious symptoms. And it's a tough subject to talk about, but especially if someone is coming to you with thoughts of suicide or like harming themselves, those are things that you really don't want to joke around about. And it is good to take them seriously. We might wonder, like, oh, are they going to think that I'm flying off the handle for offering them something or trying to ask them if they need us to call like a suicide hotline or something? But it's better to take that reaction because it shows them that you're taking what they're saying seriously and that their life matters. So it is okay to offer that. So I want to be clear too, when you have someone that comes to you with those thoughts of suicide, making sure you ask them, are you going to harm yourself? Are you actually in danger? And being willing to provide them the phone number for a suicide hotline. It's better to offer it, and it's also not on you to save them. As much as you care for them, as much as you want to be there for them, you can't put that on yourself. You need to make sure that you understand that you are not responsible for them, but we can offer the best help we can, which is by providing that phone number, providing them those resources that might be in your local area that they can turn to or reach out to.
Yeah, it's definitely like a lot. That's a lot to process in your own mind, and a good strategy, like at least like something that you can do, is thinking about these types of scenarios ahead of time. That way, when they do happen, you're not like a deer in headlights type of thing. And I don't know, maybe not necessarily. I don't think everyone has to think of these scenarios of like, what if someone confronts me with like suicide?
Yeah.
But depending on the ministry you're working in, your work environment, your friends, it would be wise to like think of these scenarios. That way you don't come across saying anything that is insulting or rude. And that's been a big thing. We've been trying to be very careful with how we are phrasing and structuring what we're saying in order not to insult anyone. Yeah. But we also want to be there to like encourage people too. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge part of being part of the church, is encouragement.
And yeah, this does start to get into some pretty deep topics and some deep discussions, and it can be a lot. It can be a lot to handle, and by no means do you have to have all the answers right away. And that's kind of what we've been saying. It's okay to not have the answers, but if you do have someone in your small group who is expressing stuff like this, it might be okay to maybe look up if there's any resources in your neighborhood or in your city that do offer assistance for counseling. Only offer it if it's asked for, and you can maybe ask them if they'd like help with those things, but never feel like you have to have those things right away. But if you are interested, there are local community resources that you can look up and look into in your local area.
To add to that, it's kind of a shame how our society has that stigma around going to therapy or even suggesting it, because it can very much come across as like an insult, like, hey, have you considered seeing a therapist? Like, it sounds like it could be a very rude thing, which is why it's important to take some time to think about how you might present that in a conversation in a way that is encouraging and not demeaning or distasteful, And just in our society, there's a lot of stigmas around things where related to therapy or even like our emotions. Our world, especially like in our country, being aware of how we are feeling is often something that's not encouraged.
Absolutely.
It's very much like react to your emotions, but don't get in touch with them. Don't try to understand them. And that can lead to some very bad reactions,
Absolutely. Emotions are there for a reason. They let us know if there's something more going on that maybe we aren't paying attention to. So if you are able to kind of build that self-awareness to recognize when you're feeling something, it could help you maybe pay more attention to an area of your life that is causing that more. If you're feeling anxious and you take some time to examine why, you might be able to find actual answers or steps to alleviating that anxiety.
Yeah, and God is like, I remember for a while, I really did think emotions were the root of all evil, so to speak, because I was like, so many people react so emotionally to things. Mm-hmm. And when their emotions get in the way, it clouds their better judgment. But it's when their emotions aren't in check, that's when it clouds their better judgment. Because if they're not in tune with their emotions, like we're saying, then it can lead to reactions rather than thinking of logical ways to act on things. Because reactions versus meditated actions can lead to very different outcomes.
Absolutely.
And God is an emotional God in a good way. Like, we wouldn't have emotions if God didn't want us to have emotions, and if God didn't have emotions either, because we are made in God's image. Mm-hmm. And he's very passionate about everything he does. And we should be too. And blocking out our emotions, I've made this like analogy before. When you ignore your emotions, it's very harmful. It's similar to not being able to feel feelings. Like like when you can feel stuff happening to you. When you can't feel things, especially things like pain, mm-hmm. you are going down a road of hurt. Well, I mean, you wouldn't be able to feel it. so sorry. But like, if you can't feel pain, it's going to be bad in the long run. For example, people with diabetes, their nerve endings get shot and they can't feel pain. And if they can't feel pain in their feet, for example, they may have a cut down there and it's getting infected. Mm-hmm. And ulcers and pus and things, really nasty, like a bacteria that's eating away their flesh. They just don't feel it. They don't know.
It does more damage when you ignore or don't have that feeling. When you don't have that pain, you will end up causing more hurt.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely, it's one thing to not be able to feel pain, but then it's another to mask the pain.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then when you are masking that pain, you it's even worse, yeah, because you're ignoring it. It's like it's there, to address it, but instead of addressing it, you kind of just look away from it, or just kind of keep it off to the side, and you don't pay attention to it, and that itself can lead to more damage too.
Yeah, because I know like some therapists, they may prescribe medications, but then you got people who are self-medicating, and I don't want to get too deep into that. That could be a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with addressing the pain and going through it. Oftentimes it makes us stronger.
Absolutely. And like myself, and I share this in one of our other videos, like I've had a struggle with my mental health, with depression, since I was 12. So I've walked this road, especially in my faith, with trying to figure out more of, what does God say about this? How does God view me? And I like what you said there. It absolutely is part of, God knows who I am and is an emotional God. So while it's easy to stick to those things that are, those sayings that say, our feelings, while our feelings are valid, they're not always true. And it's really good to hold on to that sometimes to make decisions. But if we live by that, we end up invalidating a lot of the things those feelings that are there to help us. And I've had my own struggles with God, and in some ways I'm still wrestling with trying to figure out how depression fits into all that. But I know that, God gave us minds, and He also gave us the ability to help each other and listen to each other. And some people are professionals who have dedicated their lives to helping people and listening to them through those struggles. So I think there's something biblical to seeking actual mental health and professional help from people that can maybe give you a more rounded or better ideas on how to handle that depression that you might not be able to handle yourself.
Yeah, and if you guys want, I feel bad I haven't mentioned this throughout the video, but in the video description there are links to websites and phone numbers for you guys to look at. And I really, David, thank you so much for coming to do this video thing. I hope that all of you guys out there, all the current Christians out there, have been able to get some good nuggets of wisdom from this. If you liked it, please subscribe to us. We'll be producing more amazing content to help disciples and ministry leaders like yourself in the future. So thanks again for watching, and we will see you in our next video. I like the extra. That's it. Sweet, that was amazing.
Good.
Yeah.